The Building Brands Marketing Podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Royer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who's successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leader Series of the Building Brands Podcast. I'm excited to welcome Jason Sampson today with Venerable Business Law. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
So, Jason, let's kick it off. I know in talking with you prior to today's show, you talked about making the transition from Big Law into your own firm. So give me a little bit of context into what motivated your shift from Big Law to founding Venerable Business Law.
Yeah, sure. So, anytime I talk about Big Law and my experience there, it always sounds like I'm kind of talking about things in contrast and like could be construed as negative. Not it at all. I mean, I loved that experience. I knew day one, if I'm being honest, probably was not where I was going to retire just because that wasn't my deal, but was in it, was a team player, loved it, was at Squire Patton Boggs for over 7 years and 1,800 lawyers and all that. But if I'm really looking at that experience and what transitioned me out was an opportunity to go do these things that I had learned on that big scale with the average day business owner, right? So, for my last several years at Squire, I worked almost exclusively on internal investigations across the globe. What did that mean? Means like for whatever white collar reason, they had some sort of compliance investigation going on. Could be, all sorts of reasons. We'll leave that for another day, but it got us inside some pretty impressive, ginormous companies that I would never have access to otherwise, right? So what does that look like? What's the policies, procedures, systems, all of these things, like corporate terminology I'd never come across in my life. What is like Six Sigma and all these, like, I literally had no idea like what most of those things were. So if I could see that at the global scale and bring even a piece of that to the average mom and pop business owner, like we were ahead of the curve. And also at the time I was doing a lot of litigation. So we were like, there's got to be a better way to keep these people out of trouble, right? Like that's, it's generally like, a 6-figure deal to go through litigation. If we can solve that up front with a few grand, money well spent, right? Less money for the firm, but much better for the client. So that's kind of what I was thinking when we started the firm too. So that was, Venerable Business Law in the founding days. That's what I was looking at. I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. I got a little sidetracked in actually getting to launch that mission in Folsom, but that was at least the idea when we started the firm.
Yeah. So what's the idea behind the name, Jason? Like the reason I like the name is because so many firms start and they put the name, the last name in there. And then you run into an issue like my family's law firm in Kansas, Royer and Royer Chartered Lawyers. Well, now you're on the 6th generation and there's no Royer that's a lawyer anymore, Yeah. So what do you do? Talk to me about the thought behind the name.
So it was a little conscious on my end, and I'm probably a little bit too like OCD about that too. Wasn't really a big fan, and there's probably some some psychological reasons, or there's probably some psychologists can tell you why I didn't really want to use Sampson either. But like Sampson and Associates, I don't know. It's all sounded very like colloquial to me, and like, and also it just wasn't like big enough. Like I wanted to always leave room for growth, and so venerable just means knowledgeable, intelligent, trusted. I learned it back in the days of like joining like the Masonic Lodge, like the Venerable Mr. So-and-so. And, I did a lot of research. I wanted something that's kind of spoke of like mystique and trust and I wanted to envision something like almost like old English coat of arms. In fact, that was my initial logo, looked very much like that. Was a little like leafy and, kind of just wanted to establish like this is a credible establishment. It's not just, Jason flying by the seat of his pants. So yeah, we originally started out as it's been venerable the entire time. We added business law this last year to really lean into the business side. Because people were like, well, what is it that you really do? I'm like, well, it's business
Yeah.
law. And even business law, people may or may not fully understand it. And that's, I think, a huge part of lawyers not educating the public appropriately. But we're working on it. So,
Yeah, business law is a tricky one because from a marketing standpoint, well, it's a tricky subspecialty right now because of so much evolution that has happened with some of these online providers, the prevalence of AI tools, all these things. From a marketing standpoint, it takes a really strategic messaging approach to overcome those other options
yep,
essentially that are out there, but they're not apples to apples comparisons. They're really apples to oranges. I'm
100%.
curious how you kind of prop up the value of venerable law to people that, the naysayers on the other side that would go, oh, I can go to LegalZoom and I can go get this
Yeah.
business formation for $600 over here or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's funny because we have an affiliated asset protection company, and I partner in that with a very, very profitable, very admirable estate planning law firm. My buddy Michelangelo Mortellaro, and he oftentimes just like, man, I don't know how you do it, man. You got all these competitors out there, and listen, he's got whatever that new one is, like willsandtrust.com or something.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's a thing, and we deal with it. It used to be more scary to me than it is now, honestly, because we provide a lot of value, and a lot of lawyers hate that because they're like, I'm just going to inform my consumer to go over to LegalZoom. Listen, brother, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen, and that was never my customer. That was never my ideal client. So I would rather learn now and let them go, right? And if it's only about cost, I actually say that during a lot of my consults. If it's only about cost and you're 100% driven on you got to get the lowest cost, we ain't it. 100%. Now, I'll tell you, here's the value prop. Here's what you're going to get for the money. And you're building a relationship with a law firm, and you're getting semi-customized, fully customized documents that are fitting your situation. And, oh, by the way, for 22 of my 25 years, I dealt with the other side of these things in disputes, and I know how it breaks down so I can inform it better on the outset. So when you add all that to the equation, if they're going to buy, they're going to buy. If not, you're preaching to the choir, son, and let them go very early on, and they want LegalZoom, let them go.
Yeah, I love that. So what you're educating the prospect on is you're looking at apples to oranges, not apples to apples. And if you want to go, down the apples route to the price focus thing, hey, that's there. And that might be your better option. However, I think the big thing that you're really getting at is at the starting point, while these might look equal, the reality is the formation is going to be cookie cutter versus customized with your approach. And the reality is if they need to then use your services later on because something went wrong or something didn't go as planned, it's the same reason that a state law website is in my opinion, not a valuable because you purchase an estate with the intentions of you being removed from an estate plan for the intentions of, if I'm removed from the situation, how am I implementing control and boundaries and structure to ensure that things go accordingly. It's the same thing with a business law attorney. Your biggest value is if something doesn't go as planned later on, then you're there to jump in and you know exactly the way it was originally structured with the intentions of jumping in at that point. And I feel like that's where the consumer sometimes isn't looking deep enough into the future like that. And they don't think about it until it becomes a reality, right?
For sure. And I mean, and unfortunately, they may or may not get it at the outset, right? So here's where a lot of our colleagues severely drop the ball. They get super pissy with that, right? Oh, you took my time during a free consult. Go F yourself. Yeah. You could never call me back. I learned pretty quickly into it. Like, is this a match for us or not? If they need to think about it, go for it. I want you to do business with us because you want to, not because I bested you on a call on a Monday morning or what, like all of that stuff. Make them feel comfortable and don't alienate them, because a lot of times they will come back. And this is one that might hurt your brain a little bit, especially with a lawyer on the other end. Like, if I get the sense like this is a super simple business and you really don't need what we're selling right now, listen, let's be clear. I think you always need it at a certain point. But if you're at super startup with like no budget, it's a single member, you're e-com, listen, go register this thing on, the Secretary of State, come back and talk to me in a few months. I'll tell you that straight up. I told 2 companies last week, and they were like, wrote me the most glowing Google reviews they could. I'm like, listen, love you, go for it.
Yeah.
And that's building that trust too, because it's like, you get the idea early on, as long as they're engaging with you and they see the value prop, it's like, but okay, that's great, but let's work together over time, where, rather than trying to gouge you for as much as we can right now. It's just not us. That's just not the way we roll. So
Yeah, and I know in talking with you right from the jump, it seems like you're more invested in the long-term gain and the long-term relationship than the short-term win for a one-time formation. You're looking at that reoccurring rev model as being your secret sauce to scalable growth, which is a smart way to do it. I mean, the quick wins will help you, meet a payroll this month or whatever it is, or, whatever, but it's not going to necessarily lead towards any sustainable long-term growth. So I'm curious, Jason. I know you've been pretty candid about law firms sometimes not being ran well from a business or operational standpoint, because the reality is, I mean, law schools don't teach you all the business ins and outs. They teach you about law, which they should. So what are some of the biggest financial or operational blind spots that you had to overcome early on? To let other people know so they don't have to run into the same barriers.
yeah, I mean, not unlike you can say a lot of things about higher education nowadays, and they're not really setting it up, but setting you up for be able to run a business. I get that. And there's a whole mentality of education was meant for worker bees and not the entrepreneur. I'm not getting into any of those politics or conspiracy theories,
Sure.
but you can easily say it about law school. I mean, law school is, you're the doer, you're the brain, you're the hero, you're the thing, right? Like, we are all things to all people, and we have to do all these things. It's just inefficiency at its finest. Like, that is not how to run a business model. The crazy thing about our industry is, for years, the lawyers that knew business the best were like tagged with, like, they're not real lawyers, and that's personal injury, man. Like, I wish I had some sort of interest in doing that world. I just don't. I was unfortunately one of the ones that used to be like, probably, thumb my nose at them, like, ugh, smartest business people you're ever going to find. They are running a freaking business. They are selling a product. It's about getting it in, getting it out, and all the rest of it. This whole esoteric, like, intellectual pursuit. Yeah, it's great. And that's probably why most of these A personalities go to law school, because they want to be that thing. If you want to run an efficient business, that's not how to do it. And you ask about blind spots, I have to chuckle at that a little bit, because just about everything was a freaking blind spot. Like, like setting up everything. Like, at Big
Yeah.
Law, we had to get special dispensation from the Pope to take a credit card payment. I was literally there like 3 years before I understood we could even accept a credit card payment, because it was finally like near the end of the year, and all the partners wanted their distributions, and they're like, oh yeah, there's this form you can fill out, and yeah, of course they'll charge them a transaction fee, and yes, we will maybe possibly allow. I'm like, man, like, credit card, like merchant processing, who the heck knew that? Like, I don't know, setting up your financials, actually having clean books versus, I had QuickBooks. I don't know, I synced it with a couple things. What the hell do I know? I don't have a finance background. Or, talking about finance, having a financial advisor for the firm. For my baby law firm, I was like, oh, I can get 401k and like IRAs, and like, wait, I can drop money to my retirement, my employees' retirement, potentially my wife or my family, put them on payroll, and pay less to Uncle Sam and have retirement money. All of that stuff, like, out of the gates, was so foreign to me. It was like, I'm going to go do the thing. I'm going to go litigate. I'm going to go bill some hours, and hopefully there's money in the account. That's about it. That was really like the way we were running the law firm for the first few years. Yeah.
Yeah, you and like all service-based business owners upon launch, typically, I mean, that's the way it is. You're just trying to survive at the beginning, that first year or two. And then somewhere in between year 3 and year 5, typically, like in that time frame, is when the realization switches that, okay, my focus on client acquisition is starting to shift. And now my focus is just intentional on talent acquisition or talent retention to be able to continue to deliver that same quality of service, and that, that service that you were able to provide in the beginning days when it was just you as the sole employer, a smaller team. And that was a critical shift in the business for me, because at that point I realized my job as the president of the organization no longer is solely focused on client acquisition and retention. It needs to be split time between talent acquisition and retention as well, because we're a service-based business, and that's part of our secret sauce. One thing I like in talking with you is you really made like a very clear line in the sand, and you made that hard pivot away from litigation 100% of the time to focus on, advisory and flat fee work. Talk to me about what led to that decision and how you navigated the risk. That was a real risk involved in turning off that pipeline.
I only chuckle as you're saying that because it sounds like some sort of like brilliant business decision based upon something. And I was like, I ain't doing this no more. This is for the birds. And I mean, I would say the one strategic business objective was this is not scalable in the way I want to scale. And selling, we now have what we call A6A or the anti-6, advantage, and not living our life in 6-minute increments, and that's in our little term of art to separate ourselves from that. But that's what it was. It was, how can I scale without 19 of me? And most law firms I'd ever seen just add more bodies, just add more lawyers, and I'm like, that's just nonsense. Like, why do I need to do that? And I don't want to sell my life in 6-minute increments, and I don't like that's not the highest and best use of my law degree. So the chuckling part of it is there was literally no advanced planning other than we're going to start doing this, and I ain't taking no new litigation cases, not looking at a pipeline, not looking at how are we funding next week. Now, thankfully, it was me and one other at the time, so I had a very lean team. So if I had to, eat peanut butter and jelly or something, I'd have been okay for a little bit. But it was. I always tell my clients to try to make as many decisions based upon the numbers as possible. And I'm not a numbers guy, but even best case, worst case, run projections for the next month or something. Like, I always tell them, like, when they're giving away percentages, I love when clients are like, I gave this guy 20%. What do you think you're going to make the first year? What do you think that 20% is worth? Like, tie that to something. Like, it doesn't have to be a massive, financial calculation, but project something out. Like, what are you doing? What do I need to make? A very, very hard mental shift, I will tell you, in a lawyer's brain of hourly to flat fee. That was borderline like depression material, man. Cause it was like, my life was like, I build, like, and all of a sudden I'm like, I didn't build. What the hell just happened? Like, and it was like, what did I accomplish today? Well, I got more money sitting in my account. Like, literally the game changer for me in that. And it was literally like, to me, again, without the advanced planning, I was in the middle, or like the first day, I think, of my last trial ever. And I had prepped for weeks, and it was a stupid trial, but it was a 3-day trial. And like, I'm billing by the hour. My first check came in, my first wire for an NFL athlete on a multiple LLC formation, asset protection plan and everything. And it was more money than I was going to make this entire trial for far less effort and far less of my like stomach lining, I can tell you. Like, I was like, man, how do I keep doing this, man? Like, this is way better. And thankfully, I mean, by the time I was in that last trial, I had already made the call to switch that off, but it was a pretty quick reaffirmance of like, okay, this makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely. And, they have this saying, I just heard it the other day, some of the best entrepreneurs, jump out of a plane, and then they just learn how to build another plane on the way down, or it's like something like that, right? You jump first and then figure it out as you go once you make that decision. One of the things I love when it comes to contemplating business shifts is financial simulations in like simple Excel spreadsheet, like in the simplest form.
Yeah.
It can do it with a new employee. Hey, if it's a commission driving position and what their total take home would be desired, well, then you can play with some simulations very easily. This is the base salary. These are the commission percentages based on tiered commission points, and seeing what their total take home and percentage of managed revenue, so on and so forth, will be. These are simple simulations that can be built really easily in an Excel spreadsheet. And while we used to have to do it the hard way, and manually build them, now you can even use AI to shortcut it, if you're not super, super confident in Excel and things like that. So, I mean, I love the idea of just these simple simulations to just run some financial projections in your head. I think that one of the other scary parts to this is, scalability of when you're hiring other resources and you're not billing by the hour, having proper project-based fees that you can ensure profitability for, which is another practice that can be challenging figuring it out because at the initial stage, it's a little bit of trial and error. And then I'm assuming you still keep track of hours spent on tasks. So you have, no, not at all.
No, and we've had business coaches that tell us that. I'm just anti that, and it probably does make sense to some degree. I mean, we can get into. I'll let you finish your question too. So.
No, I'm just kind of like more just collaborating on the subject. So it in that, if you don't keep track of hours, what practices do you use to try to still ensure profitability for the firm?
Yeah. At the risk of making me sound ridiculous, not much. We're actually working on completely new software right now to do like resource allocation and like where we're at and where we're hitting roadblocks. The reason why I haven't really drilled down on that is twofold. Like, yes, I think that gets you to profitability quicker of like really understanding your numbers. For me, I have this really bad knee jerk of like not wanting to be perceived as micromanaging. And since we are like on that anti-six advantage, it's like, I don't know, a little counterintuitive, like we're not going to bill by the hour, but go track your time by the hour. So I think there's a happy medium to be found. And I think we're a little bit on the wrong side of that, to be clear. What we are now building in on the resource allocation time is, what is our real drill down? Like what is our real deliverable? What do we think that is? Mm-hmm. And are we above or below goal? And just keep it at that without ever, we know we could turn this around in a day. Where are we at on that deadline? And tracking that versus, you've got the monotonous task. Because I also think you talk about talent acquisition. I know that I've seen lawyers across that table from me super light up, like you don't ever have to worry about a billable hour again. So they're like, oh, okay, great. But yeah, as far as drilling down on profitability with my finance team, like we have an outsourced CFO now, we're working on all of that. I'm starting to drink that Kool-Aid a little bit, starting to be a little bit of a better business owner that way. But I mean, let's be honest too, professional services, if we're doing it right, we have a pretty good margin, right? So let's be honest about that. Like, I mean,
you're really more looking at the blended picture of total P&L at end of the month, the full kind of sausage, and not necessarily every piece or ingredient that goes into the sausage, which is the right way to look at it. If the practice as a whole is profitable and what the bottom line looks like, which is what's most important. I think, it's like you could either work it backwards the way that you are, kind of from the end deliverable to the front, or work it the opposite way where, first you're trying to figure out billable utilization time, average amount of time put into every task, and then what that average estimate should be. It's the same output. It's just a matter of whether you're going backwards to forwards or forwards to backwards. Me personally, I'm an algebra guy. I prefer going backwards to forwards the way you're doing it. So, I like that. But anyway, taking it back to marketing for a second, it's really useful insight though. And I think that you are onto something, because you are probably, I'm willing to guess, in the minority in your space of your perspective on that. And that's not really a guess. I've talked to a lot of business law attorneys and it's working for you. But taking it back to marketing for a second, your social media presence is refreshingly human. Is the best way I could put it. Short sleeves, authentic, value-driven messaging, not this dressed up kind of lawyer speak. How has that authentic voice impacted your brand's visibility or client trust at all?
Yeah, so I think, it's interesting because it was never a conscious effort like we're going to brand this way, right? It was just me being me.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about this profession is I can be a game changer, disruptor just by being me. Like, just got out of bed today and here I am. I shouldn't say always, probably 10 plus years ago, I really made a conscious effort to speak like a normal human being. It's weird what lawyers are taught, like will, be educational to people or will impress them. Like nobody wants to hear how smart you are. I'm sorry. Like now maybe in the big corporate environment, you've got to, if you're dealing with general counsel, you've got to, kind of have that passive aggressive pushback a little bit of like, yeah, I know that Latin term, like nobody cares about since law school, whatever. I mean, the average public does not. And that's where a lot of them zone out. So if I'm talking to a normal human being, I'm going to talk like a normal human being. And like, why would you ever talk in vernacular, right? Like I very rarely will do that even with other lawyers, let alone I don't talk to many other lawyers, but that's a whole nother story. But I mean, so it was never like this conscious effort to like, we're going to be different. And it's really, I will tell you, when I first started with social media, I was dead wrong. Like I thought it had to be super produced and I was going to do this thing. And if I was going to get on camera, I had to have lights here and, this thing here. And I find now the grittier, crappier quality, the more off the cuff, ridiculous thing that comes out of my brain. And even like I was tracking, some, likes and follows and all the rest of it recently. And I'm like, the majority of my highest hits for, all sorts of impressions was not even law related. It was like me talking about building the team. Me talking about building my team was like through the roof. It was like people like, what do you do? How do you do this? I want to work for you. I'm like, well, come on over, so that type of just, I think being a human being in a world that's, everybody here is, they want their kids to be doctors or lawyers, right? So there's this thing like we're put on a pedestal, which is crap, but it is a thing. And so just knocking it down a peg of like, we're normal human beings. You can talk to us. And oh, by the way, we can provide, real speak. I think the other, so many other lawyers do my own marketing for me. Like go sit in a big firm downtown and get annoyed and, like spoken down to. And I've had, like, I picked up a doctor recently, super sharp lady, was told by everybody in her, Indo Chamber of Commerce, like, you got to go see this guy in the big firm downtown. And she told me, she was like, he didn't say these words, but the impression was, you would be lucky, Miss Client, if I allowed you to pay me money. And I was like, I looked at her, I'm like, you're super sharp, very entrepreneurial. She was just coming out of the hospital world and starting like 3 affiliated medical practices. And I looked at her dead in the eyes and I was like, I'm going to tell you the exact opposite. I would love to earn your business. And here's why. Like, she signed up on the spot. So again, I think that holier than thou stuff too, I don't know, maybe that works for some folks. That's just not me. I mean, my ego's pretty well intact. Let's all be very clear, because some people will listen to this and be like, yeah, that guy's a little full of it. But I mean, yes, I think doing what I do for 25 years, my ego is pretty safe, but I don't need to show that to anybody. I don't need to like prove to you, how smart I am in any given moment.
Yeah, well, part of authenticity is like authentic confidence, right? You in a service-based industry, you have confidence is part of it. It's the experience first, like that can back it up, that makes authentic confidence, not, false confidence, right? And so having a authentic confidence does not have to mean cocky or egotistical or condescending communication style, right? Like those two do not have to be synonymous. And that's really what I'm getting at when I look at your social presence. It's very real. And I agree in that, like, it doesn't all have to be dressed up and commercialized. I think that the message is more important than the delivery mechanism necessarily. I also think that it's good to kind of do some things on a whim, not overly scripted. I do think there's a time and a place for the commercialized content. It's just that doesn't have to be everything. And that might be more appropriate with an online video, sort of complementary tactic that's complementing your social media. That's more of a retargeting mechanism for somebody who's engaging with your channel to try to drive them from trust and consideration to decision. And that might be the time and the place. So you could see, hey, this is the real me. This is the authentic me and the personable me, because people do business with who they, people they know, like, and trust. And then the more commercialized content is, hey, this is the level of seriousness in what we do and why you should go ahead and take the action. I'm a real authentic person, but also we have a level of sophistication to our, to our experience. And I think that in talking with you, I know that it seems like you've been very involved from a marketing standpoint, which I think is a breath of fresh air. I talked with you were talking about PI firms earlier. I talked with a PI attorney the other day, and he put it best, because PI is a whole different ballgame from other areas of law in terms of the business approach. And he said, the day that I realized I'm just the partner of a marketing firm that also happens to practice law is the day that our firm just blew up and scaled. And he's absolutely right with the PI firm. That is, in my opinion, the most scalable approach, when you embrace that and realize you're going to have one partner that steps up and becomes your marketing manager, essentially, and in your case, it's totally different, in my opinion. It's not as, I guess, flashy of a model, the billboards and all these big old marketing
But
spins.
but to be fair though, I think you're onto something. I don't think you're all that off. I mean, I think the deliverable is different, right? And I think the entry point is much different. We were just talking about, some local folks that were, trying to hit us up for like Google ads or whatever. And they were like,
Yeah,
we signed all these PI clients. I'm like, well, that's a completely different thing because they're not paying money out of pocket. Like all you have to do is get to them first and not fall down on yourself, right? Now, getting to them first in that world, very difficult, right?
sure.
Yeah.
That is the critical difference. And that is exactly what I was getting at between your business model and some other law firm models, such as PI or criminal defense attorneys. The key part to your marketing machine all is in the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel of trust and consideration, because before you actually perform service work for them, they have to put a certain amount of skin in the game. So it takes more of that trust component than it typically would for someone else. It's easy when it's contingency to go, hey, I'm going to give this person a shot. I'm not putting a dime down. I'm just investing a little bit of time to bring them up to speed, And so I'm curious if there's anything in that, trust consideration part of the marketing funnel that you think is a necessity when it comes to law firms from a marketing standpoint today to be successful.
To me, I mean, I think I understand the question. Hopefully I'm answering it right. I think to me, the most valuable thing we lead with is providing that value, providing that education. And I think a lot of lawyers on the billable hour model or business lawyers or whatever, really anything other than contingency or percentage-based stuff is like, oh my God, like we have the secret sauce in our head. This is the $1 million thing. And I can never share it because they're going to go out and steal it and do blah, blah, blah. Like, man, I think just answer the question, lead with the value. And again, if they are so inclined to go DIY it, do it themselves, that was never my client. So like, I always make sure I lead off my consultations with your time is just as valuable as mine. And I think that's very comforting for them to hear from a lawyer because the perception is there, right? But
Definitely.
then also, if you have any questions, I will do my very best to answer them today. If I can't, I might need a follow-up or whatever, but I'm going to do my best. And I think that's also like, okay, well, they got something out of this. You're building a rapport with them. I just don't see how that's ever wrong. I mean, do we lose some of the DIYers? Probably. But again, like we've been blessed. And
it's not your ideal client.
Yeah, it's not my demographic. And I think there's a lot of things that lawyers lose out on too. Like, I want all of the business. No, you don't. Or at least I don't. I mean, no. I learned pretty early on, like 80-20 rule or whatever you want to call it. Like, those 20%, they're going to be 80% of my problems. They can stay away. You can have them. And that's typically the DIYer because they come into it begrudgingly. Why are we doing this? I'm like, if you don't
there's two things, Jason, that you're reinforcing and building that a little bit higher in that intake process. So like in those two things, higher quality prospect for you as well. So this is a very mutually beneficial kind of synergy here. On the head in the aspect that like when it comes to if they are a DIYer, they're probably not an ideal prospect. It is the same as an SEO guy for a decade. And I previously have worked with them because the concern was if we tell them every single thing we're doing, they're going to go and possibly try to do it themselves or hire someone else to do it. And when I started building brands, I said, we're going to give them a task list. We're going to show them every single thing that's done every single month because we're working with doctors, lawyers, home services. If these people have enough time to go and try to execute this technical type of work themselves or teach someone or micromanage someone else to do it, they are not our ideal client. They're not seeing enough patients. They're not seeing enough, practicing with enough clients to scale their business to the threshold we would like, which is $1 million to $10 million a year in annual rev. That's our sweet spot. So I quickly learned if they're asking all the questions of needing to know all the secret sauce components, I'm happy to provide that. I will I'll answer all the questions of why we're doing this, why we're doing that, why we're doing that. Now, if it's more so of them grilling me to, for example, online citations. Online citations are the easiest thing in the world to build. You just go to a website, you register business name, address, phone number, email, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can build 300 of them fairly easily, but it's a monotonous mind-numbing task. And if they're asking me, why am I being charged for this? I can build 300 citations. Yeah, you absolutely can. It's very simple to do. However, there's major value in you not taking the time to build 300 citations that take 3 minutes a piece and paying someone else to do those. That's several hours worth of work, And when a client understands the value of that, okay, perfect. We're in good shape here. Because the reality is time is money with this service-based business. And if I can offload the simple things that someone else can do, or even the more complex things that I don't want to learn how to do, but I need to know just enough to properly manage them, because that is smart. I'm not saying be hands off on everything and just say, hey, run with it, because that's how a lot of people kind of get, unfortunately, in the world of business, that's how a lot of people get taken advantage of or don't get the quality of service that they were should be getting. So I think that, you have some great business practices here. Jason, I love what you're doing because you're going against the grain a little bit. There's some things you're doing that is not the typical model. It's worked well for you, and that's entrepreneurship 101. Sometimes it's taking a leap, figuring out that maybe you didn't take the right leap, pivoting, constant critical thinking and problem solving. And, that's not only entrepreneurship, but that's probably the life of a lawyer in a nutshell. Jason, this has been a pleasure. Where can our listeners and viewers learn more about you online?
Yeah, so we're all throughout social media, right? So it's Biz Attorney, BIZ Attorney, on TikTok, Mr. Biz Attorney on IG or Instagram. We do all throughout LinkedIn. LinkedIn's under our, both the Venerable Business Law platform or under me individually, and same with Facebook. Facebook is, Venerable Law. So, and we're about to, we don't have it all set up for a link just yet, but we're also about to launch an online course for business owners, the Business Disruptor Academy. So stay tuned for that as well.
I'm super interested in learning more about that. When that comes out, shoot me a message. We might bring you back on the show, Jason. Man, you're doing great stuff. Congratulations on your success, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Excellent. If y'all like this today, be sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Building Brands podcast, available on Spotify, YouTube, and all major streaming platforms. Thanks for listening today.